Good morning, Europe. Welcome to the program. Our top stories for you this hour. Danger not over. The 12 children and their coach trapped in a Thai cave received their first food in 10 days, but still no answer on how to get them out. Plus, over in the Cube, our social media news desk.
We have the latest as police in England declare a major incident after 2 people could have been exposed to an unknown substance.
Baby deaths. A healthcare worker has been arrested on suspicion of murdering 8 babies and trying to kill 6 others at a UK hospital. Defying orders, a top Polish judge vows to show up to work today despite being forced out by a new law as public outrage grows at the judicial reforms. And World Cup knockout, England are through after a dramatic penalty shootout against Colombia. Thank you for starting your morning with us on Good Morning Europe. Our top story, rescuers are working around the clock on a plan to free the 12 boys and their football coach trapped underground in Thailand for over 10 days. The governor of Chiang Rai suggested it could be some time before they're able to leave, saying, quote, "We will not rush to take the lads out of the cave. Whoever has zero risk can leave first." Now, medics have been sent in to assess their health and plans are being drawn up to get them much needed supplies. Evelyn Laverick has the story.
Now they've been found, it's safety first, and no risks will be taken in freeing the 12 boys and their coach trapped in a flooded cave in Thailand. Officials are thrashing out plans to extract the young football team located by divers after being missing for 10 days. Meanwhile, they've received their first food and medical treatment, and several military personnel, including a doctor and a nurse, have joined them inside the caves. The kids are all well in there, says the Navy SEAL commander. We don't need to hurry. We're now laying a telephone line so the parents will be able to talk to their children.
How many of you?
The jubilation felt when the youngsters were found alive and filmed on video has given the rescue operation even more purpose. But realising that several of them cannot swim has complicated things. Still, Thai Navy SEALs have been briefed on using full face masks, indicating that teaching the children how to use diving equipment hasn't yet been ruled out. But experts see bringing them along narrow flooded passages as a last resort.
I would suggest that these children or these kids are then going into a very extreme sort of environment where it's moving water, it's dirty water, and the distances are to the extreme.
However, the prospect of having to wait several months for floodwaters to recede before the boys can walk out also seems unthinkable. With more rain forecast, pumps are working overtime as other teams scour the mountainside to find another way into the cave. Evelyn Laverick, Euronews.
Now, we can take you straight to this scene. These are live pictures from outside the cave. Rescuers and authorities are still out there. They are assessing their options. Now, there is this rescue dilemma and still no easy answer. They're trying to look for the solution with the least risk, and it could take some time before they're all led out of the cave. So these are live pictures from the scene. And now to give us more insight about this whole situation, we're joined by Chris Jewell from the British Cave Rescue Council. And Chris Jewell, he knows the 2 British divers who were the first to reach the boys. Thank you very much for joining us today, Chris. We've seen the first videos of the children. Incredible images there. And you knew the 2 divers who reached them first. You know, there are no easy options in trying to get them out, is there?
Correct. There's no straightforward way to extract the boys. Either diving them out is extremely hazardous, leaving them in and resupplying them obviously is not desirable, although being strongly considered, I suppose. And any prospect of drilling in from the surface is also extremely unlikely, with a low probability of intersecting that small chamber that they're waiting in.
And you know the 2 divers. Can you tell us about them, what kind of specialized skill they may have for a situation like this? Have they encountered something like this before?
So our 2 divers are working with the Thai Navy SEALs. The Thai military is in charge of the operation, as suggested by your report. Our divers have gone out a number of days ago to assist the team out there. And our divers have specialist skills in underwater navigation and route finding in low visibility. They were able to install a guideline, a rope that leads all the way through the underwater tunnels to reach the buoys. And that guideline, that rope, has now been able to be followed by the Thai Navy SEALs, who you've seen in the photos and reports, taking in food, supplies. I understand the doctor that's now gone in as well. So that installation of that guideline was the key skill that our two team members were able to bring to bear on this rescue.
I mean, for the moment, the children seem to be doing quite well, but being underground for an extended period of time, that would take its toll on people. Can you give us some insight on the potential psychological impact that could have?
Yeah, so I don't profess to be a psychologist or rescue sort of specialist in terms of what goes through a sort of individual's mind when they're trapped in a cave for that length of time. Clearly, as you say, it will be a stressful environment. When they will have, prior to being discovered, they'll have been without light and obviously disorientated and obviously lost track of the number of days that they've been there. Now that they've got some support from the surface, it looks like they're fairly well looked after. It looks like they're sitting there in space blankets, being kept warm. We understand they've been fed as well, so that the morale will obviously be increasing, and they're getting on the way to getting better.
And Chris, for professional divers, this is difficult, although they're still exploring the idea of getting the kids to dive. Is that even realistic?
That is a very, very challenging option. Whether it's realistic really depends on the precise nature of the cave, which I've not visited. It also depends largely on the weather conditions on the surface. So one of the things that have made this cave a particular challenge have been the high flow, the monsoon rains, which have hit the cave, have created a very, very strong current in the water. So if there's a weather window, the possibility of diving them may increase. The likelihood of bringing them out underwater might increase, and the military might choose to. Just like to stress, our two divers are volunteers. So everybody at the British Cave Rescue Council is a volunteer, has gone out and given their time to take part in this rescue.
Thank you very much for that. Chris Joel from the British Cave Rescue Council, and who knew the two divers who first reached the children in the cave. Thank you. Now to England, where police in Wiltshire say they've declared a serious incident after two individuals were exposed to some unknown substance. Alex in the Cube has this story.
Yes, I do, Tessa. So the breaking news last night was that late Tuesday, police declared a major incident in Wiltshire. This is the information the police communicated via Twitter, saying that a major incident has now been declared after two individuals might have been exposed to a suspected unknown substance. So they're very... This is, as you can see, there's a lot of room for clarification later on. But what we do know this morning is a major incident has been declared. Two people are critically ill. They initially fell ill on Saturday at a property in Amesbury. Let me just show you that on the map. So you see on the camera, we can just bring in, this is Amesbury up here. This is the property where the two were found unconscious in a house on Saturday. Now, initially it was thought they'd taken contaminated drugs. But yesterday we had this update from police that now they are calling a major incident because the two individuals could have been exposed to an unknown substance. There's now multiple agencies getting involved. And areas here in Amesbury and down here in Salisbury are now going to be cordoned off as police investigate. Police say this is a precautionary measure at this stage. The two individuals have been taken to Salisbury District Hospital. You might recognise this hospital because this is the second such incident for Wiltshire this year. Just back in March, Yulia and Sergei Skripal were admitted to this hospital after being poisoned by an unknown substance, later identified as Novichok. Now, there is no indication from authorities that there is any link between these two incidents, despite them both taking place, as I say, in Wiltshire, and both now being treated at the same hospital. So just the wider public health implications this morning, we're getting no indication there's anything for the wider public to be worried about. This statement here from Public Health England says, at the moment they believe there is no concern to the wider public. They will keep the public posted based on a continual assessment. They're also saying to people, if you have appointments at this hospital, carry on turning up as normal unless contacted and advised not to. So we'll have the latest on this story as it develops. Tessa.
It does show us, though, how people are still on edge in Salisbury. Thank you for that, Alex. Now, police in northern England have arrested a healthcare professional on suspicion of murdering 8 babies and attempting to kill 6 other infants. It comes after investigations into the deaths of 17 newborn babies at the Countess of Cheshire Hospital between March 2015 and July 2016. Police have confirmed they're also searching a property close to the hospital. Your news correspondent Vincent McAviney is live from outside the Countess of Cheshire Hospital. Vincent, what do we know so far?
Good morning, Tessa. Well, this is the Countess of Chester Hospital behind me, and in that building is the neonatal unit for the most vulnerable of premature babies, where this woman apparently worked. This woman, described as a healthcare worker, was arrested by police yesterday morning on suspicion of the murder of 8 babies and the killing of a further 6. She has now been taken for questioning, and this is the first arrest in a major investigation into the death of 17 babies and the non-fatal collapse of 15 others in a period from March 2015 to July 2016. That piqued the hospital's interest because it was much higher than it should have been. It was the highest nationally for this kind of unit during that time. And so this investigation started, now turning into a criminal investigation. And about a mile from here, police yesterday also moved on a house. I was there last night. There is some cordon around it, a forensic tent outside, and officers inside carrying out investigations. Neighbours there told me that a woman had been living there for around 2 years. Now, police so far are remaining tight-lipped, but Detective Inspector Paul Hughes says that this arrest is a significant step forward in a highly complex and sensitive investigation, and that parents of the babies from Chester and from North Wales are being kept informed of what's going on.
And Vincent, clearly a lot of families are very concerned. Have they received any reassurances on this case?
Well, those families who had been here obviously very anxious for answers on what's happened, but obviously there's babies still being treated here. I've seen parents coming and going this morning. The hospital medical director, Ian Harvey, has, though, said that the unit is safe. He has said to the public that the neonatal unit in particular is safe to continue in its current form and remains open to women over 32 weeks into their pregnancy. Now, the unit here had 13 cots for around 400 babies per year, but the hospital did have to stop pre-32-week babies being treated here in July 2016, and that hasn't continued with that service yet.
All right, thank you for that, Vincent McAviney reporting. And still to come on Good Morning Europe, a stunning fall from grace as former Malaysian Prime Minister appears in court and is charged with breach of trust and abuse of power. And we take a look at how rescuers are caring for the boys stuck in the cave in Thailand. But first, let's take a short break. You're watching Good Morning Europe. Our top story: rescuers are working on a plan to free the 12 boys and their football coach from the cave. The boys have received food for the first time in 10 days, and authorities say they're struggling to find a solution, but they won't put the boys' lives at risk. Now, an institutional crisis is brewing in Poland, and it threatens to escalate tensions with Brussels over the country's respective EU values. Well, the head of the Polish Supreme Court says she plans to go to work as usual this morning in defiance of new rules ordering her to retire as of today. Well, she has accused the government of trying to purge the judiciary. The ruling Conservative Party says the reforms aim to refresh a system inherited from the communist era. Well, across several Polish cities, thousands of people took to the streets to protest the changes last night, and further demonstrations are expected this morning. Well, let's head live to Brussels now for more from our correspondent, Brian Carter. Brian, can you walk us through exactly what the case is and what is going on?
Good morning, Tessa. Well, as of now, the retirement age for Supreme Court judges in Poland has been lowered from 70 to 65. In effect, That means that 27 out of the 72 Supreme Court judges in Poland face early retirement, including, you said it, the first president of the court, Małgorzata Gersdorf, who called this a purge and vowed that she would continue working today and until the end of her term in 2020. But this is not the first law of its kind. It's part of a larger set of reforms that have been enacted since 2015 on the justice system in Poland. The government, as you said, says that this is necessary to fight against corruption and to reform a system inherited from communist times. But critics say that these reforms hurt the independence of the judiciary, the rule of law, and that effectively the court system in Poland is now under the control of politics. Tesa?
And clearly, Brian, Brussels has not been happy with Poland over a few months now. How have they reacted to this?
Well, on Monday, they started an infringement procedure against Poland because of this Supreme Court law which could lead to a European Court of Justice decision and financial penalties against Poland. But because of all the laws that I mentioned earlier that have been enacted over the last 3 years, in December, the European Commission launched what's called the Article 7 procedure, which is the most powerful tool at the disposal, which in theory could lead to stripping Poland from its voting rights in the European Council, which represents the member states. But clearly the European Commission wants to continue dialogue with Poland, and sources here in Brussels tell me that there's a real worry about these reforms, not just because of democratic principles and principles of the rule of law, but because if you hurt the independence of the judiciary, it could hurt the cooperation in judicial matters, and it could also hurt investments in Poland, whereas the government just sees this as an ideological dispute. Tesa?
Yeah, turning out to be a sticky situation there. Thank you, Brian Carter, reporting there. And the Trump administration has reversed a set of policies introduced under President Obama to promote racial diversity in schools and college admissions processes. Now, U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions revoked 24 guidance documents on Tuesday, a number of which involved race in schools and recommendations on affirmative action. Well, the Department of Justice called the measures unnecessary and outdated. A man who fell overboard whilst on a cruise holiday has been rescued after treading water for almost 24 hours. Well, amazing footage shows the 33-year-old being picked up by another cruise ship 21 miles north of the Cuban coastline. The man is said to be in a stable condition. South Korean basketball players have been training in North Korean capital Pyongyang ahead of friendly matches between the two nations this week. The games will be the first between the two Koreas since 2003 and will mark the anniversary of a 1972 agreement on unification plans. And still to come for you on the program, we speak to the head of mission for Open Arms, a migrant rescue ship that is due to dock in Barcelona this morning. And over in the Cube.
Our team have been across the latest developments in the rescue operation to save the stranded Thai football team. But first, let's take a short break.
This is Good Morning Europe, our top story. Rescuers are working on a plan to free the 12 boys and their football coach from a Thailand cave. And the boys have received food for the first time in 10 days. Authorities say they're struggling to find a solution, but won't put the boys' lives at risk. And as we know, that the process is going to be long, it's going to be lengthy and difficult. And now the attention has turned to how will the boys survive if they have to stay in that cave for months? Alex, has this part of the story?
We do, Tessa. So obviously we've been hearing a lot about the rescue operations to save these boys. But the reality is, with Thai monsoon season upon them, the waters are really hampering the rescue efforts. And in order to get these boys out, it's been suggested that the passengers will need at least 4 months for the water to drop and the boys to safely make it back out. So with them in the cave for this length of time, people are obviously concerned about their welfare. Well, this video shared by the Royal Thai Navy shows doctors meeting with the boys here. It was shared on Facebook. This is them conducting a general health check. Now, they said that the boys are in generally good physical condition. You see here with blankets, reflecting blankets to keep the heat in. So they're also bringing them in fresh water and food, bringing these resources to the boys trapped in the cave. Now, that's one thing. Getting the boys out of the cave is the real challenge here. And with the boys trapped like this, concern is turning to their mental well-being. This tweet here sums it up quite nicely from Rosa, saying the boys have been trapped in a cave. They could be there for 4 months. They have enough food to survive, but it's not clear what this is going to be doing to their mental health. And let's not forget, for 9 days, we were reporting on this show that there was no contact with these boys from the outside world. You can only imagine what these young boys were feeling trapped inside that cave. Well, they received some advice from a source who might understand what they're going through. He was one of the Chilean miners trapped in 2010 underground for 69 days. Well, this is the advice he gave the boys.
I want them to know that being scared is normal. Don't be embarrassed to be afraid, because we were also scared. We also shed tears. Us being adult men, we cried. And I also think it's good for them, a relief. If they are afraid, don't show bravery, because that might harm you.
That's Omar Regaras, who was one of the men trapped in Chile. And obviously we had those pictures that went all around the world when they were finally saved. Well, we're having to wait for those pictures for Thailand because at the moment things are not clear about how they're going to get the boys out. But one thing I will say, lights are being brought in, not just food and water, lights to make this environment safe for these boys and a place where their mental health will not suffer too much. Also, telephone lines are being laid so they can reach the outside world. But as yet, no news on how they'll get them out. Tessa.
What an endeavor. Thank you for keeping an eye on this story, Alex and the Cube team. Thanks. Now, so far this week, more than 200 people have drowned while trying to cross the Mediterranean. This brings the death toll this year to more than 1,000. And that's despite a significant drop in the number of people attempting the journey compared to the same time last year. Well, earlier this week, the Libyan Red Crescent recovered the bodies of 17 migrants washed ashore near Tripoli. NGOs fear that boats are taking greater risks now that Libya and Italy are cracking down on the Mediterranean route. A spokesman for the Libyan Navy told Euronews that they have not received the aid promised by the EU that would allow them to have more boats, life jackets and fuel to rescue migrants at sea. Well, the rescue vessel Open Arms is due to arrive later this morning in Barcelona with about 60 migrants on board, including children, and they were rescued off the Libyan coast. And just like the Aquarius, the Open Arms was turned away from ports in Malta and Italy earlier this week before Spain finally accepted it. I'm joined now by Guillermo Canardo, the ship's head of mission. Thank you very much for joining us today. Can you tell us what the latest is? Do you have any exact idea of when you're going to dock?
Yes, we are in this moment on board rescue vessel, Spanish rescue vessel Open Arms. We are 20 miles from Barcelona. We will arrive in 3 hours to Barcelona.
Can you tell us more about the conditions on the ship right now? I understand you have some 60 migrants. Can you tell us what it's like on the boat?
Well, the conditions are good. The health conditions are good. We have a medical team on board. They check everybody. They are happy because they are going to arrive to Europe. They have the hope to start a new life. But at the same time, people suffer a lot of, they explain us they suffer tortures, all kind of abuse in Libya. So we start a process to take care of the best possible way for these people when they arrive to Barcelona.
I want to talk a little bit more about your work, and can you tell us how difficult it has become for ships like yours to rescue people in that area?
Well, every day is more difficult. Now we have problems with the Libyan Coast Guard that is paid by Europe. They try to push out of the area the humanitarian vessels. At the same time, we have problems with the Italian government that they don't allow us to enter in their ports, that is the closest to the SAR area. And we have problems with Malta too, that they don't allow to enter in their ports to refuel the vessel or just to buy food. So now we need to go to Barcelona, that is 3 days away from the SAR zone. That it means that we take almost a week. If we rescue someone, we take almost a week to go to Spain and come back. That it means there is 1 week without NGO vessels on the SAR area. That means more dead people there.
All right, and very briefly, some governments, including the Maltese government, have said that, well, NGO vessels are breaking the law. Where does that leave you and your work? Will you continue doing this?
Yes, we are not out of the law. Our vessel is under Spanish flag. We are a rescue vessel with all the papers, and we are doing rescues on international waters. So we will keep doing this job while there are still people dying on the Mediterranean. Remember that more than.
Indeed. Thank you for that, for taking the time to talk to us. Guillermo Canardo, the head of mission of that ship. The German Interior Minister Horst Seehofer is in Vienna today, where he will explain to the Austrian government Germany's new border measures. Tougher border controls in the state of Bavaria were negotiated after Seehofer threatened to resign over Chancellor Merkel's alleged open-door migration policy. Austrian Chancellor Sebastian Kurz said that Germany's new migration agreement could force Austria to introduce their own tougher border checks on neighbors. Well, coming up for you, we'll have a look at all the top stories, including a closer look at that cave in Thailand where 12 children and their coach are still stranded. And French President Emmanuel Macron, he visited a Nigerian nightclub. We'll talk to our correspondent who was also there. And more World Cup action. Now, England are through to the quarterfinals after a dramatic penalty shootout. And on that note, we'll leave you with today's No Comment. More images from Russia of football fans. A recap of our top stories and Good Morning Europe. Danger not over. The 12 children and their coach trapped in a Thai cave received their first food in 10 days, but still no answer on how to get them out. Defying orders, a top Polish judge vows to show up to work today despite being forced out by a new law. That's as public outrage grows at the judicial reforms. And World Cup knockout, England are through after a dramatic penalty shootout against Colombia. A plan is being worked out for the safe rescue of 12 boys and their football coach who have been trapped in a network of caves in Thailand for more than 10 days. Well, now they've been found. No risks will be taken in freeing them, officials say. The group could be forced to wait for days, if not weeks longer, as fresh rain hampers rescue efforts. In the meantime, they have received their first food and medical supplies, and several military personnel, including a doctor and a nurse, have joined them inside the caves. Well, one story we're following today, police in Wiltshire in England have declared a major incident after 2 people have been exposed to an unknown substance. Well, Alex in the Cube is following the story.
Morning, Tessa. Yes, and police say the public in Wiltshire and Amesbury can expect to see an increased presence as they deal with this incident. Let me just show you the area we're talking about. This is the area of Wiltshire. Here is Amesbury, where on Saturday, 2 individuals, both in their 40s, were found unconscious in a house. Initially, police suspected that they had taken contaminated drugs and they'd fallen ill because of that. Well, now, late last night, they declared a major incident after it was confirmed that these 2 individuals could have been exposed to a suspected unknown substance. The police wording leaving a lot of room for later clarification in their statement, giving no details about exactly what this might be. What we do know is a major incident has been declared. What we do know is that areas where these 2 individuals visited before they fell ill are now going to be cordoned off and examined. Police say this is just a precautionary measure. We also know that those 2 individuals have been taken to Salisbury District Hospital, where they are now being treated. Both are in a critical condition. Now, you might recognise this hospital because it was at the centre of another story Wiltshire dealt with this year involving what was at first an unknown substance. That was involving Yulia and Sergei Skripal, the former Russian spy, and his daughter, who were poisoned with what was later identified as Novichok. This hospital is now dealing with another case of an unknown substance, although authorities say there is as yet no known link between these two incidents. So despite these reports of a major incident being declared, Public Health England, the body in the United Kingdom who deal with reassuring the public and giving them the latest information, say there is no wider public health risk. They will keep assessing the situation and will let people know if that changes. Also, the hospital saying people should attend routine appointments unless contacted and told not to do so. So a developing story, we'll keep our eyes on it and we'll let you know the latest. Tessa.
Right. Thank you for that, Alex and the Cube team. Now, in his youth, Emmanuel Macron worked as an intern at the French embassy in Nigeria. Well, now he's been returning to his old haunts as president of France. And as we can see there, last night Macron visited a nightclub founded by legendary Nigerian Afrobeat star Fela Kuti in Lagos. He told a young audience at the new Africa Shrine that they should take inspiration from Fela because he was not only a singer but also a politician who wanted to change society. Annelise Borges is following the French president's visit, and she was at that same nightclub last night. Annelise, good to see you there. Can you tell us what issues has President Macron been tackling on this tour?
Well, Tessa, security has largely dominated this. That is the 8th visit by Emmanuel Macron since he became the French president last year. And this 3-day tour started in Mauritania on Monday, where Emmanuel Macron met with the leaders of several African countries during an African nations summit. He met with the presidents of Mali, Burkina Faso, Chad, Niger and Mauritania, the members of the G5 Sahel force, a force that was created to fight terrorism in the region. Emmanuel Macron reinforced France's commitment to fight against terrorism alongside these African nations and help them win that fight. A fight that Emmanuel Macron said is a common fight, a fight that he said is an essential fight, and a fight that he says will go beyond a defense strategy and a military approach, but will have to involve development, social development. And once again, he reinforced France's commitment to invest in Africa, especially through France's development agency, which is said to already be behind some 40 million euros in projects across the continent.
Yeah, so that is on the security front, but we also saw him, as we saw in the videos, he was visiting that nightclub. Is there a cultural side to this visit?
Absolutely, Tessa. This is the second leg of the trip that started last night here in Lagos, and it was an epic evening at that African shrine, the new African shrine, a very symbolic place here in Lagos, but across Africa, really, where Emmanuel Macron got a taste of African culture at its best. There was music, there was dancing, there was fashion, and the French president got to speak directly to Nigerians, to young Nigerians, who he urged to forge a future for themselves here in Africa and stop looking for a future elsewhere. Of course, that addresses another major issue that has not really been approached that much during this visit, the issue of migration. And of course, Emmanuel Macron spoke to these young African citizens, saying that they should look for a future here. I spoke to some of those who were in the audience and who told me that they identified themselves to the young president, the young French president, and said that they were inspired by Emmanuel Macron.
All right, thank you very much for that, Annelise Borges reporting there. Malaysia's former prime minister has appeared in court on corruption charges over billions of dollars that went missing from a state investment fund that he founded. Najib Razak has denied 3 counts of criminal breach of trust and 1 charge of abuse of power. The case follows a long investigation that was reopened following Najib's election defeat 2 months ago. Our correspondent, Alistair Sanford, joins me now in the studio to analyze what is happening there. Alistair, before we get into the analysis, tell us the facts of the case. Can you break this down for us?
Yes, Tessa, this is the result of a long-standing investigation which had gone away, which has now been revived since Najib Razak lost power in May. And it relates to billions of dollars that are said to have gone missing from a state fund. Razak has appeared in court, as we've seen. He was arrested on Tuesday. by anti-corruption investigators and spent the night in jail. He faces these 3 charges of criminal breach of trust and 1 of abuse of power for personal gratification. Each one of those charges could bring a potential 20-year jail term. In particular, there's one suspicious transfer of more than $10 million into allegedly one of his or several of his personal bank accounts from a company known as SRC International, which is a branch of this state fund that he set up, which is called 1MDB. Now, Najib strongly denies the charges. He's pleaded not guilty in court. His supporters, who we've seen turned out in force, say that the charges are politically motivated. He's put out a statement on Twitter saying, well, he's not perfect, but these accusations aren't true. But he's now been granted bail.
And Alistair, I think what's fascinating about this story is this incredibly dramatic fall from grace. How widespread is corruption now linked to his rule?
Well, the investigators say that billions of dollars were looted by Najib's associates, by his cronies. The Malaysian authorities had cleared him of these charges, but there were suggestions that they'd been intimidated. The corruption allegations, however, were so big that they played a part in his defeat and have been used by his successor, Mahathir Mohamad, the 92-year-old, who also a former prime minister, who was in power for almost 30 years himself, who's now said tackling corruption is a priority. Najib has been banned from leaving the country. Basically, what happened during the decade that he's been in power, he was in power from 2009 to 2018, he set up this state fund. It was supposed to be about turning Kuala Lumpur into a global city and boosting the Malaysian economy. But debts weren't repaid, money went missing. Some reports said that there was a paper trail showing that some $700 million had gone directly from the state fund into Najib's accounts. Recent weeks have seen investigators raid his properties, interview family members. They've seized assets, including jewellery, altogether worth some hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, he said all this was completely legitimate, but the investigators now say that this is really the tip of the iceberg, and the US Department of Justice says that overall some $4.5 billion went missing.
Yeah, indeed, a lot more to uncover in this story and a lot more to follow. Thank you, Alistair Sanford. And a lot more to come for you on the program, such as the World Cup first for England, and it has fans dreaming of victory. And over in the Cube.
Well, we're also talking World Cup and the Nigerian captain who had a terrible secret to keep during the game. First, let's take a short break.
Welcome back to the program. Our top story this morning, rescuers are working on a plan to free the 12 boys and their football coach from a Thai cave. The boys have received food for the first time in 10 days, and authorities say they're struggling to find a solution, but they won't put the boys' lives at risk. Now, there are reports of groups of young people clashing with the police in Nantes in France. Alex has been following this story. Alex.
Yes, Tessa, we had these reports of clashes late last night. Here in the Cube, our social media news desk, our team monitor all forms of social media to verify stories and see what is going on. So we used SnapMap, which is a tool that geolocates videos posted on Snapchat to see if there were indeed people on the ground filming these reported clashes. Let us just show you. This is Nantes, the western French city here. These areas you can see are blue on the map, show where there has been increased activity, where people are posting. And Emmanuel, if we could just zoom in on the neighbourhood. This is the neighbourhood, Breel, where the clashes took place. Now, initially, a 22-year-old man was killed by police in a stop-and-search gone wrong. Police have said in a tweet that the individual refused a police check. Either way, we know that he died, and his death is now being investigated by police. But his death sparked groups of young people, angry young people, to take to the streets and to clash with police demonstrating against this. And we've been pulling up some videos this morning, Emmanuel, if we just have a little tap through. These videos posted by people on Snapchat from the scene. You can see here officers in riot gear. We can tap through, perhaps, Emmanuel, to see some of the other videos posted, which do include burning vehicles. Vehicles were burned, and indeed a shopping centre was partly ignited. You can see here, here we go, here's some of the scenes of the fires you could see. These are all filmed on Snapchat and posted to the neighbourhood. We will keep across this as police in Nantes say they are reinforcing this area, expecting potentially some more problems from this. Tessa.
All right, thank you for keeping an eye on that, Alex and the Cube team. Now to sport. Have England broken their World Cup curse? Well, their fans certainly seem to think so. There were scenes of jubilation last night when the Three Lions won their first ever World Cup penalty shootout, sending Colombia home and England into the quarterfinals. They'll play Sweden on Saturday after the Scandinavians beat Switzerland 1-0. And of course, passions were high and there were numerous fouls, yellow cards, accusations, theatrics. And here to tell us more about this historic night is our sports correspondent, Andy Rubini. Andy, I think people thought this was going to be a bland evening, but then it turned out it wasn't.
It wasn't at all. It was a very tense game. I thought England got off to a strong start, controlled possession, didn't create many clear-cut chances. But they eventually took the lead thanks to a well-taken penalty from their top goal scorer, Harry Kane. And then I thought the national team coach, Gareth Southgate, he's had a great start to the tournament, but yesterday maybe tried to be a little too defensive, which doesn't probably suit the English style that well. Brought in a player called Eric Dyer instead of Dele Alli, so more defensive. And instead of shoring up the England defence, this kind of invited the Colombian block higher up the pitch. They created more chances, eventually got an equaliser in the dying moments of the game, brought the match to extra time and then penalties. The whole world probably thought that England would lose because that's what they do. But this time they didn't. They actually won thanks to a great save from their goalkeeper Pickford and a last penalty from Dyer. This is actually the first time that England win on penalties
yes,
at
indeed.
a World
It was
Cup.
Another one of those shocks, but this time a good one for England fans at least,
Exactly.
right? But then they're going to be playing Sweden next.
Sweden in
right?
the next round, exactly. Sweden actually edged out Switzerland 1-0. I was thinking of ways to best describe this game. I'm actually going to come up with something. I can't believe I'm even saying that, as I tend to cringe when other pundits say it. But it was a game of two halves. I know it's so cliche to say this, but it was, especially for one player, Emil Forsberg. Sweden's number 10 was transparent in the first half, came to light in the second, scored the winning goal, created space for his teammates, and they're through, which means that either Sweden or England will make it through to the semis in Russia.
A quick answer for you here. England, can they make it through to the World Cup, to win the World Cup?
I think after seeing them win a penalty shootout at the World Cup, I think anything is possible. I also think that this World Cup has been a World Cup of upsets so far, which just goes to show that anything can happen.
All right, thank you for that, Andy Rubini. And do stay with us on Good Morning Europe. We'll be back after a short break. You're watching Good Morning Europe. Welcome back. Now, as we were talking about just before the break, there are a lot of shocks in this World Cup, a lot of surprises, and there's still one more. Alex has this one for you. Alex.
It's hard to believe that this took place, really. I mean, I can barely imagine what it was like to deal with this. This is the Nigerian captain, Mikel John Obi. Here he is before that game with Argentina. Well, just 4 hours before that match, he was told his father had been kidnapped in Nigeria. The kidnappers demanded a ransom, which went into the tens of thousands of US dollars. And they told him that if he gave any indication or reported anything, his father would be killed. So Mikel John Obi here had to lead his team in that match against Argentina with the knowledge that his father is in the hands of what he called bandits, and was unable to express anything on his face or any words that he was to say to the press or teammates. I mean, that is pressure. Now, it's worth saying that Argentina did win that match again, so it wasn't an easy day for him. But luckily, the good news did come in as Nigerian authorities reported that Obi's father was rescued later that day. He was originally kidnapped along an expressway, but was later safely rescued. Now, John Mikel Obi himself tweeting his thanks to the police, to the public, and to everyone for giving their support. He's now saying his father is recuperating with his family and that he and his family are grateful. But what a thing to go through. And naturally, social media exploded with support for the Nigerian captain facing this. I mean, this is a great line here. You are really a Nigerian hero. God bless you. And I commend your dedication in the face of uttermost despair. People seeing what he did, not necessarily on the pitch playing football, but what he did on the pitch, hiding the reality he was going through, as something truly remarkable. Another one here. Credit to you for still playing and bringing so many Nigerian and football fans joy. couldn't have been easy for you. Now, if you want to read the full story, you can do. Go onto Twitter, you can go onto Euronews' page, follow the link, and you can read the full story there. But a shocking story, but one, thankfully, with a happy ending.
An incredible story, how he was able to keep playing after that. Anyway, thank you, Alex and the Cube team, and thank you for joining us in Good Morning Europe. Do stay with Euronews, as always, for all your top stories, and we'll leave you with no comment from Thailand, where rescuers continue to try and find a way to rescue the 12 boys and their coach out of that flooded cave. And while they get given their first meal since their ordeal started more than 10 days ago.
โอเคแนะนำก่อน มีถั่วไหม